the December MOSIS Core Data webinar. We'll talk about the current MOSIS reporting and core data reporting, and do a few slides and then open it up for questions. The December cycle is a pretty simple one, actually. There's only one MOSIS reporting file, and that is the December Student Core. It's due December 15th. And the data from the Student Core file flows into screen 11 of Core Data, which is the special education educational environments by age. So just to go over some information about the December special education child count, which is what we are primarily using the Student Core for. It is a count of all students with IEPs or services plans who are receiving services on December 1. And it is due December 15th through the Student Core file. So in general, you need to make sure that you're including all of your students with disabilities. So those are the students that have IEPs. And make sure that you don't forget kids who may be receiving only speech services, kids who are parentally placed in private schools but who are receiving special education services, students who are in private agencies and receiving their special education services through that private agency placement, early childhood special ed students, including those students receiving itinerant services. And also we want you to remember to include any recent students who transferred into your district who are receiving comparable special education services. A couple other notes, students should only be reported by one district within the December Student Core. So if you're sharing kids across districts, you need to determine who will actually be reporting those students, and we'll talk about that here on the next slide. Another thing to remember is that students who are in the state-operated programs, which includes Missouri School for the Blind, Missouri School for the Deaf, and Missouri Schools for the Severely Disabled, are reported by those state-operated programs. So they will report the students in the Student Core files, and the resident districts will not report those students at all. There is a link on this slide that takes you to a lot of technical assistance for reporting the child count information. So we're going to go over residency status a little bit. We know that most students with disabilities are served by the district in which they reside, and so those are your resident 1 students, and they're just reported by the district where they are attending, which is also their resident district. But we also know that there are students that are receiving services from a district that is not their resident district. So I'm going to go through some of those examples kind of quickly here. The first one is non-resident kids, and these are sometimes called resident 2 public, but the residency status itself is NR for non-resident. And this is where the resident district is paying full tuition to the attending district. In these cases, the attending district reports the student with a residency status of non-resident, or NR. In these cases, all of the data is reported by that attending district, but behind the scenes we move the membership counts and the attendance hours back to the resident district for funding purposes. Then we have the resident 2 private students, and these would be the kids that, for example, an IEP team has determined that the best placement for the student is a private agency. And in this case, and the private agencies don't report data to us, so in this situation, the resident district is going to report the student as a resident 2 student. So that means getting some information from that private agency in order to report attendance and just other information about the student. And then there's also situations where districts form a cooperative agreement, or they just have an arrangement with another district to provide services for students. And often in this case, the resident district goes ahead and reports the student instead of the attending district. If that's the case, the resident district reports the student as a resident 1, which means that the resident district code, the attending district code, and the reporting district code all has to be the resident district. This just shows you some of those scenarios where you've got students attending the resident district, which is District A. The residency status is R1, and the reporting, the attending, and the resident district codes are all District A. The second scenario here is students attending a non-resident district, and that would be District B. So District B is going to report the students as a non-resident. The attending district code is also B, and the resident district would indicate the student's actual district of residence. And then you have the students placed in a private agency. They are reported by the resident district A as a resident 2 student, and the attending district code is noted as the private agency that the student is attending. One of the reporting fields is called, it's labeled placement, but it's actually capturing the educational environment of these students with disabilities. So I want to talk for just a quick minute about the difference between the placement and the educational environment. And the placement is a decision that's made by the IEP team, and it's documented as part of the IEP. The educational environment for school age purposes, those code sets are very similar to the placements, with the exception of the Correctional Facility Code of 1801 and the Parentally Placed Private School Student Code of 2100. So if you have students with disabilities that you're providing services for that are in a correctional facility or are parentally placed in private schools as of December 1, you're going to report those educational environment codes instead of the IEP placement. For early childhood special education, the placement and the educational environments are very, very different. You need to capture both. The placement is again used on the IEP and is determined by the IEP team, and it really looks at where special education services are provided. The educational environment, on the other hand, really looks at where the child is spending time, regardless of special education services. And there's a decision tree that we have available that is really helpful in determining the educational environment. And it basically goes through 3 questions and allows you to follow that through to determine the correct educational environment. And the 3 questions are, is the child attending a regular early childhood program? And if they are, then there are some additional questions off of that. If not, is the child attending a special education program? And if the child is, then what kind of special education program is it? And if the child's not attending a regular early childhood program or a special education program, then where are the special education services provided? The last bullet on this page gives you a link to that decision tree. The third bullet will also get you to that decision tree, but it is a link to a webinar that we did a couple of years ago that really walks through the early childhood special ed educational environments in a lot of detail. So if you have questions on that, I'd recommend that you check out that webinar. 2 last things on early childhood special ed is we know that in a lot of cases the ECSE services are provided by the district that is not the district of residence. But the children are generally reported by the district that is providing the services. And if that's the case where a district is serving non-resident children, then we ask that you report them with a residency code of NR for non-resident, and then indicate who the resident district is. So once you have certified the December Student Core, there's a nightly process that runs that populates the special education verification report. And it is a federal requirement the districts sign off on the special education child count. And the signature on that verification report either needs to be your district superintendent or the special education director. So you can find that report. It's on the MCDS portal under Special Education and Guided Inquiry. The access level that you need in order to see that is the Special Education District profile. So if you need to get to that report and you're not seeing it in the portal, you would need to talk to your district user manager to get access to that report. We've posted instructions on both accessing and finding that verification report. It's on this link here, but just remember that the data are refreshed nightly. So if you certify the data on Tuesday, then you'd have to come back the next day to pull up the verification report. When you pull up the verification report in the portal, you'll have to select the year, which in this case would be 2017. It gives you 8 pages of reports, so it gives you summaries by disability category and summaries by educational environment. So it gives you a variety of summaries of that child count data. You can export the report. The easiest way really to look at it is to export the report to PDF. That gives you just all 8 pages in a format that's a little faster to work through than to go through all of the pages on the report itself. We ask that you sign and return only the first page of the data when you've verified that the data are correct. If the data aren't correct, if you notice that something's not right, you would go back to your MOSIS December Student Core file, make any changes that you need in that, recertify it, wait till the next day, bring up your verification report, and check that out again. One thing that I want to mention is an email went out from the MOSIS folks today that there's going to be some maintenance done on the MOSIS system starting Friday afternoon and lasting through the weekend. So and into Monday as well. So I know that December 15th is next Thursday, and that's the due date for the report, but the system will be down from Friday afternoon through Monday. So if you were planning on working through the weekend, you have a great excuse not to now. But the system will be back up early next week, and we will let you know when the system is back up. So at this point, we're going to open it up for some question and answers. And so if you have questions, just type them into the Q&A pod, and we will respond to them as they come in. There was a question about the new foster child field that's been added to the file layout, and I just wanted to give you some information about that. So for the December student core, you cannot have the foster field in the student core file. It's really not going to be available until the February student core file. However, if after the February student core is available and due, you have to go back to either October or December student core file and resubmit it, recertify it, then it will expect that field to exist. I'm just going to go through verbally and address some of these other questions as well. Some of them have already been answered. But there's a few questions about a deadline for submitting the verification report for the special education child count. And it doesn't actually have a due date on it. We would like to have it as soon as possible. And I believe on the verification sheet itself, it says it due 2 weeks after the data are certified. We'd like to have it as soon as possible. If we don't have it by early to mid-January, we will probably start contacting you and asking for that. So verification report is not due on the 15th, but we look for it shortly after you've certified and verified the data. There is a question about preschool students and who should report them. So in general, if a preschool child is receiving their special education services from another district, the non-resident district will report that student and report them as a non-resident kid. We know that there are situations where we've got preschool kids who are actually attending a regular early childhood program in their resident district, but the special ed services are being delivered by a different district. Either it's a fiscal agent for a co-op or just some other arrangement. So in that case, there could be reasons for the child to be reported by both districts, but for the December student core, we just need to make sure that only one district is reporting the IEP disability code and information. So in the case where a child is attending a regular early childhood program in their resident district but receiving special ed services from another district, the resident district can report the student but don't report an IEP disability code for them. The serving district would also report the child and would report the IEP disability information. There's another question about if you've sent in your verification sheet and signed it saying everything was good, but then you realize that you needed to correct something, it is okay to go ahead and make that correction, and you can then go ahead and rerun the verification report the next day and resend that to us. At this point, we've answered most of the questions, I think, and we will take these and post them as well. We'll clean up the answers and post them hopefully in the next week or two. And just as another reminder, the MOSIS system will be down starting 5 p.m. Friday afternoon through Monday. So if you're on the verge of having something done, you might want to try to get it done before Friday afternoon. Otherwise, check back on Tuesday or just watch messages. We'll let you know when it's back up and running. There were quite a few questions about the foster field. I think Amber addressed most of those, and it's basically, it'll be a new field for the February student core. So if you get this done, if you get the December student core done before then, you will not include the foster field, but if you need to come back and recertify either October or December after the February time frame, then you will need to include that field in the file layout. The verification report for the special education child count is available on the MCDS portal. You have to log in, and the access that you need is the special education district profile access. Once you log in, you go to special education and guided inquiry, and the report should show up. It's called the special education verification report. It doesn't technically have a due date, but we ask that you send that back as soon as you can. And if we don't have that back from you by early to mid-January, we will start contacting you for those. I think those were, I know there were several questions about early childhood special education and who reports those students. If you do run into questions about who should be reporting the kids, our contact information is here. You can either call us or send us an email at speddata@desi.mo.gov, and we're happy to help you out with any of the reporting issues that you have on the December student core. The important thing is to make sure that every student with a disability, so every student who has an IEP or is receiving services through a services plan, is included in that December student core. We will hang on here and see if any additional questions come in, but if not, we will close this down in a few minutes.